GraceandTruthRadio.world proudly presents Life Coaching for Men, improving their relationships with their wives and learning to communicate for a more fulfilling and satisfying marriage. And now, Men Loving Well, with Christian counselor, author, and relationship coach, Dr. Jim Slaughter.
Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to pick up in the middle of an interview my wife did with me on her own radio show about how men can love their wives well.
Today we are joined by Christian counselor and life coach, Dr. Jim Slaughter, and he is going to discuss with us how to love well. He has a radio show called Loving Well, which targets men. It's for men to know how to love well and to learn how to love their wives well. I always have questions like, why do men have so much trouble loving well? And so you're going to go over that for us, right, Jim?
We are going to talk about that because that's exactly right. Men have a hard time loving very well, and there are reasons for that. I'm so glad to get to come on with you today, and it's a little dangerous to talk about this as a guy because you realize that you're one of that group of people who may have a hard time. It's not instinctive, really, for men to love very well. It's not natural, particularly, and others want us to love them well, but it just doesn't come easily for us. And so
they try so hard, but so often they miss the mark. Even though they're trying so hard, they just don't understand women.
Mm-hmm. That's true, and you and I have worked real closely together with couples, helping them understand both ways. Helping men understand a little bit better why their wives are the way they are as a woman, and helping women understand why their husbands are the way they are as a man.
Right.
And it really makes all the difference in the world. And when we're with a couple and we begin talking about this and explaining some things about why a guy will do this when it's so exasperating to his wife for him to say the things that he does and come from that perspective. And it's just as exasperating for him, for his wife to, kind of come from where she's coming from. But when we begin to explain how that works and what happens and how you can turn that around, people's eyes light up, they think, wow, maybe there's hope for us,
Yeah, maybe there's hope for us. I saw you working with a couple the other day, and just that one session changed them immensely. She was very angry, and all of a sudden she had so much compassion and understanding for him because she finally understood him. And you said things I had never heard of, like brain sex, the difference between men and women's brains. I mean, I heard some of that, right? But I was like, wait, I've known you so long, I never heard you use that term. And you were like, well, I studied that during my dissertation. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add that, it's for me it feels kind of like a sort of a bold thing to do, to come on the air as some kind of a person who's going to tell other guys how to love really well. Please understand, we all, there are times when I probably don't do that. I probably don't love very well, but I have spent a lot of time thinking about it, studying why guys have such a hard time, and so I've worked really hard to do a little bit better.
This is what he does for a living. Help men understand women, help them to love their wives better or their families. And you did well today bringing me coffee. Is it a mocha? What is this?
It is a skinny mocha.
Skinny mocha.
Yeah.
Appreciate
See,
that.
I know a lot about you.
Today, I know you wanted to talk about love and some of the misnomers about love and things like that.
Yeah, there are just a number of things to consider, especially when it comes to men, how we have such a hard time, as we said earlier, really understanding how to love very well. We have a hard time communicating often with our wives, maybe with people in general, but in particular with our wives. And a lot of that has to do with the differences in the ways that our brains process data, process information. When I wrote my doctoral dissertation, I did it on a passage in 1 Peter 3, the New Testament, 1 Peter 3, where Peter addresses the issue of the relationship between husbands and wives and gives some exhortations there to both. But 3:7 is the one that I dealt with, which is particularly the instructions to husbands. And in that, I ran across an article at the time, and now it's a book, and we looked it up and talked about it last night, called Brain Sex, The Real Difference Between Men and Women. And it was such an enlightening thing for me to read about what Ann Moore and David Jessel had done in that article, because it opened up so much understanding why men and women often miss each other. We're on different planes The basic difference that that they highlight in that article and in the book is that men, our brains are built, constructed, created in such a way that we process information compartmentally. We tend to think linearly. We go in a line for what we think. We are working on this project. We finish that. We move on to the next one. We finish that. We move on to the next one. And so our thinking is linear. And so that means that we have a hard time being comprehensive with things.
Oh, I was just going to say, I didn't mean to jump in, but I was just going to say that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Why men are the ones at the last minute running into the store for Valentine's. And the checkout people are like, yeah, just wait until the night before Valentine's or lunch the day of or after work on Valentine's. It's mostly men running in. So they're thinking linearly and then, oh, yeah, now it's Valentine's.
Right. And I attribute that phenomenon to that very thing. Now, that's not that all men don't do that, but it's a tendency for men to act like that, to behave like that, because they'll be thinking, oh, this work project, that work project, now I'm on this one, and oh, yeah, the next one's Valentine's Day. And so we tend not to plan ahead. We might plan ahead for a project because we scheduled it in and everything, but we tend not to plan ahead for things like Valentine's Day. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a later segment of the show. Yeah, but that's at least part of that. And so men tend to think compartmentally. One guy said, we think like waffles with these little segments there that fill up with butter and syrup and all that. We think like waffles, whereas women, on the other hand, think like he says spaghetti, right? Because they're all together. We go everywhere. And I would say that women tend to think comprehensively. They think beyond the immediate situation, and they have the ability, not just the ability, but they are programmed to bring so many different aspects into a topic or consideration. And that's why a woman can, in an argument, she'll go back 10 or 15 years and say, well, remember when you did this?
Right.
And I'm thinking, no, I haven't thought about that in years.
Yeah. I think that women think about everything all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to compartmentalize. And I don't think women are able to do that very well. Not that we can't go to work and be distracted a little bit, but still in the back of our minds, it's still there if we had a fight with our husband that day. And we're pretty much exactly the same way when we get home. It's just helped us to stay busy. But men really are not that way. We
are not. And let me just say, too, about the comprehensive thinking of a woman. It's not just a kind of thing where it's handy in an argument for a woman. It's very helpful to a couple. You know, if we really believe that we are a couple together, we are a team together, you are my complement. You are a kind of a completer of who I am. Then that means that I rely on your skills. I rely on your gifts and talents and your special abilities as a woman. One of which is to be able to think comprehensively. And so what that means is that women actually do have a woman's intuition. That brain capacity, that brain facility that they have for comprehensive thinking makes them sensitive to nuances around them. They might bring in something that Aunt Nellie said 5 or 10 years ago into a situation, and now it bears fruit. It helps me understand what's going on, and a woman often can detect things that are going on and where to go and what to do much quicker than a man can, just because of that.
So men don't have much intuition. Is that what you're saying?
Not really, unless it's learned intuition. In other words, it comes out of my studies or out of my academics or something like that. Yeah, my training. Women have another sense about them where they, because of the way their brain works, it thinks comprehensively, not compartmentally. So they have this special built-in capacity or ability to sense things like that men can't sense.
Well, and I would think if everything is all there together, even though that's not what they're thinking about at the moment, they feel something because something else is in the background here working. That's great to know. And I know that we have dealt with lately quite a bit couples where one of the couple is saying they don't feel romantic love, or they don't love their husbands anymore. They just don't love them like that, and they don't feel that love, and they're thinking about leaving, talking about divorce. And it's so sad that they really don't understand what that is.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of misunderstanding that goes on, and the truth of the matter is loving well it doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come instinctively. It's a learned skill.
Well, and I know you've talked about the different kinds of love. And so this is just they're loving differently And it's that romantic love is different from that. I mean, how would you explain that, if you don't mind?
You mean the different loves? Or,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the Western world, we have identified 4 basic kinds or types of love. One is what I call affection love or fondness love, where it's kind of the thing that grows on you. That's why I can say very really that I love cherry pie with ice cream or something. Another love would be a kind of friendship love, where I have guy friends and we're very connected in an important friendship way.
Well, and that is the fondness you were talking about. What kind of love is that?
The Greek word is storge, S-T-O-R-G-E, and again, Greek words identify those types of love.
Well, and you stay right here. We're going to hear about the other kinds of love and what they mean and what really is going on in that relationship. We'll see you right back. We had a discussion during break that was really cool. And so you wanted to finish up. You were describing things. What
we were talking about earlier was the four loves, and we were just describing very quickly. We talked about affection love, and we talked about basically mentioned friendship love. And then there is the romantic love that in the Greek language is called eros. And then eventually agape love, which is a biblical term, but it's a selfless love. It's a gift kind of love where I give something and I don't need anything back.
Is that the sacrificial love?
That's yes. A sacrificial love, exactly. And so, sometime we'll talk about all 4 of those. But you were mentioning too the fact that there was a couple, couples come in and they don't feel anything.
Well, one of them, it's usually one of them, says they're not in love. They don't feel love anymore. And you made a statement during break, which is, love is not a feeling. There is some feeling of it, but that is not what love is really all about. Love is an attitude. Right.
Love really is not a feeling or an act. Sometimes we talk about making love, right?
Yeah.
It's not really, that's not so much what love is. That's a very small part of romantic love or eros. But that's very important to remember, that just because I don't feel something doesn't mean I can't move towards my spouse, my wife, in a loving way. And that's important to remember.
Well, and there's times you don't feel happy. There's times you don't feel sad. And you just don't go, I'm never going to feel happy again. Or I'm never going to feel sad again. I'm angry, so I'm always going to be angry. None of that makes sense because it's just a feeling. Feelings come and go. Feelings are flitting. And so if you're not feeling it, so understand that at that point there are ways to get it back, and it's just because of some things going on. It's not like a permanent state.
Exactly.
And so there's an attitude change that has to happen to get it back, and it's your responsibility since you're the one not feeling it. Though who knows what's going on, but you start doing things, and that's what you talked about.
Yeah, I just something just came to mind to me. We were in our coaching, training and practices and all that kind of thing. We were supposed to kind of put a purpose statement together for our particular coaching and what we were going to do. And we kind of jokingly, I said, I think I want to teach men how to get what they want from their wives.
Right.
And you and I were the only one who found that funny, I believe. But
No, I think the women, the men, I think they just looked at you kind of funny, but the women were like, oh my gosh, you should go into that, and specialize. And it's funny because you didn't plan on really doing that, but over the last 20 years, you've kind of evolved and working with men, groups with men, discipling men, all about men. And then finally, men in desperate situations needing help, and then eventually doing this.
Well, and what I really meant by that was that if a man loves his wife genuinely and loves her well, then she will tend to reciprocate that love to him, and that he'll give what she needs, she'll give what he needs and would like to have. And so there's this reciprocal kind of relationship that results, but often it needs to be initiated by the guy.
Right.
And that's very difficult for men to do, because often they'll tend to try to explain their way out of something, or defend what they believe, or give 1, 2, 3, 4 ways to fix something when their wife comes and just wants them to listen. And it's really hard for guys to figure out that what my wife really needs from me is to be heard. She needs me to listen. She doesn't need me to say anything all the time. If she wants an answer, if she wants me to fix it, she'll ask me.
Right.
But so that's a lot of what guys need to learn, and that is that the way we come at things, because the way our brain's made, is not what a woman normally needs from us.
And I think that biblically it talks about women not usurping men. But basically it goes on to explain that if they do, it's really because men are not doing what they need to do. You were talking about love as an attitude.
Yes, absolutely. And if a man wants to reach his wife and to love her well, and in turn would invite her to love him well back, the focus is offering her the best part of myself, which is an attitude about love that is enriching, and it creates a bond. And it's something that she wants very, very much. And she will appreciate that because of one reason is because of the way, again, her brain works. It's a kind of comprehensive thing. And it will pervade. When our attitude is a loving attitude and a selfless attitude towards a wife, that attitude and the sense of it and the meaning in it will pervade her thinking. I mean, that's the way she'll begin to see a man. This is expressed extremely well in the New Testament, and I'd like to read a couple of passages because it really tells us how to love well. And it has to do with attitude first. And the first one I wanted to read was from the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, beginning in verse 25. And this is Paul talks to husbands here about how to love their wives well. He says, husbands, and by the way, I'm reading from Eugene Peterson's The Message as a translation. I love this translation. And I've done translation work, and I really appreciate this one. He says, husbands, go all out in your love for your wives, exactly as Christ did the church. A love marked by, get this, guys, giving, not getting. Christ's love makes the church whole. His words evoke her beauty. Everything he does and says is designed to bring the best out of her, dressing her in dazzling white silk, radiant with holiness. And this is how husbands ought to love their wives. They're really doing themselves a favor, since they're already one in marriage. No one abuses his own body, does he? No. He feeds and pampers it. That's how Christ treats us, the church, since we're part of his body. And this is why a man leaves his father and cherishes his wife. No longer two, they become one flesh. Paul's instruction is pretty clear to guys. And not to go, into this a whole lot, but I've sat in different kinds of exams for men who are being ordained to ministry and all kinds of things. And often men view this passage in Ephesians as a right to domineer. They'll call themselves the head of the home when it doesn't even say that, really.
And that's not in the Bible, being the head of the home.
No, that term is not used. The term actually in here in Ephesians 5 is the husband is head of his wife, as Christ is head of the church. But that doesn't mean that he takes control. That doesn't mean the husband is the controller.
No.
It means that he's a lover. See, and that's the mistake that guys make sometimes.
Which is what Christ does for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's grace and loving and merciful and passionate and cares for us and all those things. It's almost like they interpret what God was trying to do and turn it around to what man did as those Pharisees that Jesus came to change. It wasn't that God had set that in the law, but man made it long before the law and kept doing it.
Right.
And so they were abusive in a lot of ways. And that is not what the Bible says. It actually contradicts that.
Yeah, and this passage is saying just the opposite. We're not to control. We're not to dominate. We are not to do any of those kinds of things. Because in exercising headship, and so people mix that up a lot. They don't understand that. And really, Paul is saying, if you want to be a good husband, if you want to be a biblical head, if you want to call it that, then love your wife well. And there are two terms that he uses here that are really kind of remarkable. He fits them in here. One is nourish, and the other is cherish. Nourish has this feeding kind of idea about it, where I enrich my wife. And the cherishing part comes from a Greek word that means to heat something up. It comes out of metallurgy in that background. But in that sense, there's a warmth attached to it. I am to warm my wife, and this can include lots of things. But I am to do those kinds of things, and that starts with an attitude, not just simply an act. The other passage, did you have something you wanted to
Well,
mention?
I just know that we have learned a lot about love, and it's the choice to cooperate with God in serving your spouse. Both ways. The individuals who truly love see themselves as God's agent for enriching the lives of their marriage partner. For them, love is a way of life. It is loving as a way of life, not to get something selfish, not to get something back, but to actually serve God in loving your spouse,
Right.
and your family. But definitely they're constantly looking at ways to help, encourage, and support. And so that's just all to say, that's what you, if you're doing that, then you're listening with ways and you can even ask questions about, how can I help you? What do you need me to help you with? Things like that. People are very endeared when you ask to help.
Yes, they are. That's a good point.
And not just when they say it to go, I don't really think that's how I should help. I should do something else. That's not listening, and that's unloving.
Right. And there's something I want to say about listening and how important that is for husbands in just a minute. If we have time, I'd like to read one more passage of New Testament Scripture. If you want to know how to love your wife, this is how you do it. In fact, it has to do with loving anyone well, but if you apply it to your relationship to your wife, that would be such a blessing. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13, love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't strut. Love doesn't have a swelled head. Doesn't force itself on others. Isn't always me first. Doesn't fly off the handle. Doesn't keep score of the sins of others. Doesn't revel when others grovel. Takes pleasure in the flowering of truth. Puts up with everything. Always protects. Always looks for the best. Never looks back, but keeps on going to the end. Is your love like that, guys? Well, sometimes it can be tough to be a perfect lover, but if we start there, we're going to gain a lot of ground with our wives.
It sounds wonderful to me, if that's the kind of guy you strive to be. I know that you had some specific things that you wanted to share that they can do.
Well, and we were talking about the 4 loves, and Valentine's Day is a kind of a lover's day. It's a celebration of Eros, that romantic love. I call it also oneness love. Because it's the love that the Bible talks about. I think in Genesis it talks about a man and a woman becoming one flesh. We are in a very real but inexplicable way to us one. I love what Emily Bronte said in her book Wuthering Heights. You remember that's kind of a famous, really passionate place there where she's talking about the heroine's talking about her lover, and she says, "I love him because he is me. I don't know what our souls are made of, but his and mine are the same." That woman has a really good understanding of what love, true love, real love, loving well does. It combines 2 souls in a way. Now, here's some things that we were talking about. Valentine's Day is about Eros. It's about that romantic love. Remembering it's an attitude first rather than an act. And so, but it does have to do with that in-loveness feeling. It does have to do with that. We talked about not planning ahead, but that's something we can do. But one of the things that I'd like to encourage you guys to do, that I want to do too, is spending time with your wife, spending time with her. Show interest in her. I think lots of women today would just say, my husband I'm invisible. He doesn't even seem to know I'm there. Show interest in her. Move towards her. Another one is to talk to her, which is extremely difficult for a lot of guys to do. They don't know where to start. What do I say? I ran across an interesting thought the other day. We do talk and teach people how to dialogue together as couples, and it's very, very important. And I ran across a statement the other day that said, the way to a woman's heart is through her ears.
Yes, sir.
And I thought that is hysterical, but it's really true in a sense, because a woman needs her husband to talk to her. A wife needs to hear from him in a dialogue situation. Not that he would direct her, not that he would dominate her, not that he would tell her what to do. Those are all out of bounds for a guy to do. But dialogue means to have a discussion, to talk together. That's important for us to do. And it said because actually the husband's voice is seductive to his wife, but also because she needs him to listen and to hear from her.
Well, and listen, we talked about that on the way here, that listening when you can pick up on love languages, because we're having a love language workshop, March 23rd. But you can pick up on love languages just by listening. When they ask you, my family used to ask me what I wanted for Christmas. And I would say, oh, go to the movie with me or go hiking with me. And my family would look at me like I was crazy. One time I asked them to sell a car for me. And they were like, what? That's so crazy. What's wrong with you? But
I
if
said,
they
that
had,
is not a gift, Ann.
I know. But if you
It
had
is. It can
listened,
be,
if you
sure.
listen, that love language is service. Service is doing something for us, selling something. Spending time with me is quality time. And so even if you don't know love languages, you can pick up on by what your spouse is asking instead of going, God, that's crazy, which is what you said to me.
No, I know.
That's
I'm
crazy.
so sorry.
That is not a gift. But it is a gift. It's one of the most loving things you can do is to listen to the person, no matter how weird you think they are, listening and considering it and realizing that's what they want. So doing what they want instead of what you think they should want. Or what you think, making assumptions instead of asking or just listening.
Yeah, and that's so crucial when it comes to gift giving, if we plan to do that. Thinking about a wife, who she is, what she likes to do, and making it about her. The moment we make gift giving about us and not about her,
right,
we're dead meat. It's all over.
What makes you feel good to give, right? That's what you mean by
right,
that. Like,
right.
I'm going to do what makes me feel, I feel good because I'm buying her this. But she may not want it, or he may not want it. Believe me, I hear it all the time. But definitely trying to pick up on the love languages based on what they're asking.
Right.
And definitely that would help you love your spouse better.
Yeah, and also just to think about her, who she is. I mean, if she's athletic, maybe some kind of athletic wear, or new running shoes or something like that would work, or some kind of accessory for her bike or whatever it is that she likes to do. She likes to read. Then she might enjoy a book or two in the favorite genre that she loves to read in.
Or she might want, plan a hike.
Yeah.
Go go on a hike with her. So, no, not getting her little sexy lingerie for Valentine's.
Oh, come on. No, absolutely. A lot of guys do that. But who's that for?
That's for the man.
It's for him. It's not for her.
No.
Yeah, and so you want to stay away from that kind of stuff. You want to stay away from things that you would like to give. You go for what she would like to receive, and that's the way we think.
Well, and if she asked for that, that's one thing, right?
Right.
But if she asked for something else, now that is something, if you ask for it for your birthday, that she would get that for you, that's different.
That's different.
Right? Or, so part of that is, a lot of guys just want chocolate. They'll just go get chocolates and flowers.
Just because they want to have something to hand her.
Yeah. And I think that the longer you're with somebody, they want you to think deeper than that.
Right,
they don't
right.
want to get you what everybody gets everybody, because that doesn't feel very personable.
Right. And so if you want to be loved well by your wife, then it means you love her well, and then there's a reciprocal kind of response usually from that.
So definitely you want to set some goals, listening for their love language, and then setting some goals to love better.
Yes.
This Valentine's. And that's one of the things, goal setting right now, because men, I'm talking to men, I'm hoping women do it already, right? But men need to set goals so that they can prepare. And this is early in the month, and so you have time. But we also are having the love language workshop. So
right.
Learning each other's love language, learning it is not the only thing that you do. Because I've had people say they know it. Oh, I had mine. I just can't remember it right now. And I don't know his. And I'm like, well, you wasted your effort, because you've got to know. It's the most important thing. It's a foundation for being successful, besides communication and conflict resolution. But if you don't know their love language, communication and conflict resolution can be very difficult.
Very difficult. And even when you try to make really good strides and you want your attitude to be right and do the right things, if you don't understand what makes your wife feel loved, then you're not going to succeed.
Not only do you learn your love language, you also learn what it means, how to use it. We have all these exercises that you do, and you really grow in understanding and love, and that becomes an incredible foundation for your future together.
And it's a very important aspect of loving well. In fact, I'm not sure I know too many better ones than that.
But learning the other person's, because if it's not native to you, if it's not, something by instinct that you do, it can be very hard. So that's part of what we do on the workshop. So if you'd like to attend that, just give us a call, 817-232-1363. We'd love to have you, March 23rd. There were some other things you were going to mention.
Yeah, I just wanted to, we don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to mention these things. I would encourage you guys who are listening out there, spend time with her. enjoy part of your day with her. Spend time, think about her, talk to her, listen to her. Stop defending and explaining and just listen. She will love you for it. If you give her a gift, make sure it's about her, not about you.
And just know God has given you your spouse to love. They're not yours, they're His.
That's right.
So treat them like you would anything in your life that you're managing for God's glory. If your expression of love comes from that motivation, nothing you will do will feel insincere or manipulative. And for your children, it's the best gifts you could give them.
Yep.
And by modeling a godly marriage, they will be set up to choose their own spouse, well, someday. And they will have a great model in their parents. So you guys, do it well. See you back here next week and get better.
And love well.
Love well.